Hi, everybody online. We're just waiting for one more to make quorum. Bear with us, everybody. We just are waiting for one more member to join. Okay. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. With the quorum present, the Maricopa Regional Continuum of Care Board is now called to order. Please turn on your microphone when speaking and mute when not speaking. The MAG public comment process allows members of the public to comment on items on today's agenda or on items that fall under the COC's jurisdiction. If you would like to comment at today's meeting, please fill out a white request to speak card by the door and give it to MAG staff. If you parked in the garage, parking validators are available by the door. If you purchased a transit ticket to come to the meeting, please see staff for a ticket. Hearing assisted devices are available by MAG staff. Brian, will you please take roll call? And when your name is called, please share that you are here and the organization and your organization after Brian calls your name.
I've got Letitia Brown Gambino, Tim Birch, Jessica Cruz, Liz DaCosta, Chris Hallett.
Stay with access. Do we need to introduce?
Say that again?
Do we need to introduce when you call roll call?
Yes, sorry.
Okay. No, yeah, no problem. Liz DaCosta with access here. Thank you.
Sorry about that. Chris Hallett. Michael Hughes.
Here, a new leaf.
Jessica Raymond. TJ Reed. Charles Sullivan.
Charles Sullivan with ABC.
Sienna Valdez.
Here with the Youth Advisory Committee.
Cricket Weatherington.
Present. AHI.
Danielle Wright.
Here, ACES TV.
Co-chair Rachel Milne,
Here, City of Phoenix.
co-chair Vicky Phillips.
Here, Community Bridges.
And please note, I think Jessica Cruz joined us as well. So we do have a quorum. All right. Thanks, Jessica. Next on the agenda is the call to the audience. This is the opportunity for the public to comment on items that fall under the Continuum of Care Board that are not on the agenda or that are on the agenda for discussion and not for action. 15 minutes will be provided for the call to the audience agenda item unless the committee requests an exception to this limit. Brian, were there any comments received or anyone who wishes to offer comments at this time?
No comments received and nobody offering comment.
All right, thank you. We'll move to the next agenda item. And our next item is the approval of the consent agenda. Items 3A, 3B, and 3C are on the agenda for consent. Item 3C involves funding for Arizona Behavioral Health Corporation, so Charles Sullivan should recuse himself. But we should have enough votes without Charles to approve the consent agenda as a whole. Does any member of the board have any questions, comments, or would like to request a presentation on any of these items?
I move for approval of the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. We have a motion from Mike Hughes. Do we have a second?
This is Vicky, I second.
Thank you, Vicky. Is there discussion of the motion from the board or comments from the public? For those in the room, we will take a voice vote. Those in favor, please say yay.
Yay.
Those opposed, please say nay. I will now ask Brian to proceed with roll call for those joining online.
Jessica Cruz,
Yay.
Liz DaCosta,
Yay.
Sienna Valdez,
Yay.
Danielle Wright,
Yay.
Vicky Phillips.
Yay.
Wonderful. The motion passes. Thanks, everybody. And now we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is agenda item 4. The next item on the agenda is an update from Matthew with MAG on the recently awarded YHSI grant and overview of the work that it will support.
Thank you, Co-Chair Milne. So this is just a quick presentation on Arizona's what is called YESI initiative. YESI stands for the Youth Homelessness Systems Improvement Grant. This is a first of its kind grant that HUD has awarded. Unlike other youth grants that HUD has awarded in the past, this is specifically focused on improving the system. So it will not be focused on any direct work, but more systems level work, and will be throwing up in the HUD definition. So expanding it from just 18 to 24-year-olds as youth to anybody 24 and younger. So very exciting. We applied for this grant collaboratively with both the Tucson Pima COC and the Balance of State COC. There are 4 overarching goals that we included with the proposal. Each of these goals have unique activities within them. But so our first goal is to establish statewide partnerships to combat youth homelessness. A part of the call for this grant was to expand the reach and work of homelessness resource building. So it is to, again, not just open up from 18 to 24, but 24 and younger, but also to expand the systems that this works with and around. So this goal is really focused on being able to connect with other systems across the entire state, whether that be DCS or justice work or healthcare work, education work, list goes on and on. Also to be able, within this goal, is to develop a better idea of the resources that are available for youth currently across the state in all 3 COCs, and then develop a strategic plan around improving access to those resources, improving the messaging around those resources, And then there's also a lot of the objectives that fall under this one is, or actions that fall under this goal is around getting a better sense of data. So we will be building data crosswalks with other systems so that when we say X amount of youth are experiencing homelessness, we can actually have a holistic number that takes into account youth that are identified with McKinney-Vento, as well as youth that are identified with runaway and homeless youth, as well as DCS involved and juvenile justice involved, so that it is a much more holistic picture. So that is our first goal. The second goal is to achieve system design parity across continuums of care. So really, we know all three of the COCs in the state are at different levels with their youth systems. Tucson Pima has been awarded a YHDP grant in the past, and so they have a pretty robust system. And so really the goals are to help bring Maricopa and the balance of state to that same level. And so this would include developing a youth action board for the balance of state COC, and developing a by name list for the balance of state COC, a youth by name list, and then really being able to synchronize policies and procedures. It's not uncommon for youth to move around the state and move around with relative quickness. So somebody's in Tucson on Monday and then they're in Flagstaff on Friday. It shouldn't require a whole load of cognitive work to figure out how to navigate that system in Flagstaff. It should look similar, if not as same as possible. So that'll be a big part of this goal or objective. Our third goal is to develop career pathways for youth in the homeless response system. So this will be a unique process to identify with service providers how a youth peer lived experience support specialist could look like in their services and their programming, and being able to establish an actual staff position and a youth peer support role in those programs. This is unique because it will also come with matching funds from the grant, so that service providers will put up 50% of that youth's salary and the grant will put up the other 50%. So this is a pilot program, pilot pathway, but that will be a part of this goal, is developing that and fleshing out so that youth are aware how they can go from receiving services to working in the system and supporting people that they really relate to. The other piece too is building a mentoring and networking system for youth that want to work in the system, that want to work in the homeless response system, and then also embedding a youth with lived experience as a staff member on the grant programming. And then the fourth goal is to organize a statewide youth conference on homelessness. We don't know excessively what this will look like yet, but figuring it out, taking into consideration that this is a big state and we want to make sure that there are no physical barriers for people being able to attend. This will pull together youth, service providers, and policymakers to help develop solutions around youth homelessness. The other big piece of this will be any youth that are to attend will be paid for their attendance and for their input and expertise. And that's the YESI grant in a nutshell. So if anybody has any questions.
I have a couple. How much was the grant for?
Just a little over 1.7 million.
And this is more to streamline the services, and so it's not to enhance.
Exactly. And so really the goal, a big hope of this is that the impact from these activities will lead to one, a system that's easier for youth to navigate, but two, that this will improve and bolster both Maricopa COCs and balance of state COCs applications for YHDP funding, which will lead to many, many more services.
And how big
awarded.
are you anticipating you want to make the conference? How many people?
Yeah, good question. I think so. Kind of the first activity of that goal is to really figure that all out. I think ideally any youth that are currently at a service provider that wants to attend would be provided that opportunity. And so maybe it looks like a network of mini convenings at the extension campuses in each county, or it looks like renting buses to bring everybody into Maricopa or Flagstaff or, wherever it makes the most sense. But definitely wanting to make sure that any youth that want to attend and contribute their expertise are provided that opportunity. And then in turn, making sure service providers and policymakers are in attendance so that there's actionable steps that can be taken from the expertise.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Any other questions from the board? I just want to congratulate you, Matt. This is tremendous work and so great for our system. So thank you so much for all the work that you put into this. Super excited.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to the next agenda item. Agenda item 5 is actually canceled. Doctors Heather Ross and Diana Bowman from ASU were scheduled to present on their work related to dementia and cognitive impairment among older adults, but unfortunately they were unable to join us today, but they will join us in August. So moving on, item number 6 is our quarterly homelessness trends report, and Cleo Warner will present on this quarter's numbers. Take it away, Cleo.
Thank you. Thank you for getting the report up. All right. Oh, I probably won't need this. So this is quarter 1 of 2024 that you're seeing here. And basically the overall, or one of the overall takeaways from this quarter's report is a general increase in numbers throughout each of our subpopulations. And you can see that here reflected in our total actively household homeless number. And then in bold there, oh, sorry, Tyler, do you mind scrolling up just a tiny bit more? Thank you. You see there that our total is at 12,408 actively homeless clients across 9,333 households. Then we get this glimpse at a new to system number. So these are a graph that is showing an aspect of our inflow into the system. And you can see that uptick there in this quarter from January to March. Going down to the positive exits, that is an aspect of the outflow of the homelessness system. We can see outflow also slightly decreasing there as well. If you scroll down to the second page, thank you. Here is our demographic snapshot page. So keeping in mind that this looks at heads of households, not the entirety of our population. Not tons changes here from quarter to quarter, but you do see that race and ethnicity addition of the multiracial category, which was a reflection of the HUD data standards changes. So that was in the last quarter's report as well. So just something to take note of there as something that, has changed a little bit and shifts numbers slightly. Looking at our age groups, again, we just continue to see that HUD-defined adult population, the 25 to 61 category being our most significant. There were comments from the COC collaborative to potentially break out that category further because it is such a large majority of our population. So if that's something the board is interested in doing as well, it's something we can look into and figuring out how to further visualize that for this report. And then that comparison to the Maricopa County census numbers gives us a look into any disparities that may exist between the homelessness population and population in Maricopa County. So these subpopulations, as mentioned, we're kind of just going to see that general increase in each of these. This is not entirely uncommon for this time of year. If you look back at our system flow dashboard, you do see those upticks start happening around this quarter every year, increasing through the summer. Let's see, I would say each of these is a fairly slight increase. We have that 9% in families. Older adults, a slower increase than we've seen previously, but still there. I would say what stands out the most is that veterans number that had, I want to say it's like a 12% increase. If you scroll down just a little bit scroll down. Thank you. Yeah, that 12% increase in the quarter, which does appear to be pretty stark for that general trend line. But we can keep on moving down. And then, yeah, there's our chronic number, which remained almost, consistent. And usually we see larger ups and downs there. So just some stuff to read through for our subpopulations. This page looks a little different from last quarter. We still have that call out to our system performance measures where you can go to our website and play around with that interactive dashboard to get a better sense of all aspects of system performance measures that don't totally make sense to have on this more succinct report, but definitely encourage everyone to go check that out. The wrap up 2023 numbers are there as well as the this quarter for 24. This new and closed projects in the past year category reflects a request that the board made a couple meetings ago, about a quarter ago, to get a better sense of not just who the new projects were coming in, but also which projects were being closed out so we can sort of see where the system is sitting. This gets to be a little trickier to track because while it is apparent when new projects come on to the HMIS system, it is less apparent specifically when closed projects are closed out and when they stop serving. So it's not something that is necessarily on a quarterly basis we're able to track in a really accurate way. So because of this, we have a new year look back at projects that gets updated each quarter. And that's sort of how we've decided to split the difference there and try to show which projects are coming on and which ones are coming off, so you can look at those totals at the bottom there. From the collaborative as well, there was a request to get additional information about any details we have behind these new and closed projects, particularly like the nature of why these projects close and maybe like specifically what type of projects they were, like what those 3 permanent supportive housing projects looked like. So that is something we are working with the HMIS team on. And while I don't know if that information necessarily makes sense to have on this report, just to have it as like an additional memo or detail when giving these presentations, is something that I think we're moving towards so that there can be this additional context for everyone. But please, if you have feedback on that new and closed projects section, let us know. We're kind of playing around with what makes the most sense to give you all the information you're looking for. And then our these little pieces at the end, not so little, very interesting, significant data. That's our in the circle there, the people experiencing homelessness in the past year. So if you look at the asterisk there, these are those who are in outreach shelter or transitional housing, whose homelessness is not resolved. So it gives us just this like overall number of people still experiencing homelessness in our system needing help. And then our snapshot of clients served in a month by program type. These are not deduplicated numbers. The point is just to get us to see the volumes that each intervention is experiencing throughout a given month. So with that, that is a quick overview of the report, but if you have any specific questions, please.
I have a couple.
Yeah.
One, the number of projects being closed and the ones being newly opened, is that going to be a net increase or decrease of the amount of people that are homeless being served?
That is one of those things that we're trying to figure out.
So you don't know yet?
Yeah, so like if you scroll up a little bit Tyler. So yeah, we could see that we have more projects coming online than have closed, that
Yeah.
36 to 33. It's very, for some of those interventions, it's easier to be like, that program is designed to serve like 10 units, or that shelter holds this many people. Others, it can be really difficult to track. So we're trying to figure out how to do that in a way that has a level of accuracy reflected in it that isn't too like confusing or back and forth. For like, I think the classic example is sort of like family shelters, where they could have a room that has 6 beds in it, but if a family of 4 comes, then like there's 4 people in there, but it would have the capacity to serve 6 otherwise. So that can fluctuate from time to time. So figuring out a way to really accurately reflect what a program capacity is,
Yeah.
it can just be difficult. So we're still working on it and figuring out, and the goal is to get a better sense of like, yes, we see the projects, but how many are they serving?
And with that being said, do you see with the ARPA dollars coming in a sense to a close, and even now the number of homelessness numbers going up, do you see that number significantly increasing?
The number of those
Homeless.
experiencing homelessness?
Yeah.
It's something that as a team, we're still trying to wrap our heads around like what that balance would really look like, of like how many services would be dropping off with that funding. And I don't think we have a definitive answer right now. We know that our summer numbers do tend to increase with people interacting with the homelessness system, and those general trends. But yeah, I wouldn't say like we're anticipating this huge flood of projects
Okay.
closing and people in need.
I guess the last question I have is the LIHTC Arizona Department of Housing Awards came out a couple weeks ago. And has there been any response or thoughts from the COC where 38 applicants, I know 10 were awarded, but only 2 were from Maricopa County? And Maricopa County being by far the largest county, was there any surprise or any concern that only 2 of the 10 that were awarded were in this county?
I don't
And I
have
don't
a
know.
response to that at this time. I would say, anytime we can get more housing at all, it
Yeah.
is a win for us. But we haven't talked about that as a team.
Okay.
Thank you, Mike. Any other questions from board members? Not seeing any. Thank you very much, Cleo, for your work on this. It's always great to go take a deep dive into these and then further look at them when we're in front of our computers and can play with it a little more too. So thank you so much.
No
All right, next item on the agenda is item number 7. A representative, Nicole Newhouse from the Arizona Housing Coalition, will share the latest about the 2024 legislative priorities. Thanks for being here, Nicole.
Happy to be here, Rachel. Well, what can I say about this last legislative session? I'm super excited. It's over. They adjourned sine die at almost 10 o'clock p.m. Saturday, June 15th. And they passed a $16.1 billion bipartisan budget after addressing a $1.4 million shortfall. And the way that they did it is they did a 3.45% cut across most state agencies. They canceled a $333 million deposit into the WIFA, the Water Infrastructure Account. They have delayed highway projects and pavement improvements. And as it relates to housing and homelessness, I would say we did a full court press to get the renewal of state LIHTC. And we were willing to settle for just a renewal, not an expansion, although that was the initial ask. And we pressed hard, but because budget negotiations are, by virtue of what they are, political, we will take what happened, which is the absence of the renewal, because we have another year to get it renewed. But they wildly appropriated $15 million to the Housing Trust Fund. Now, I've had people say it's only 15 million, and my rebuttal to that was I was expecting zero. And in fact, throughout the process, there was lots of discussions of clawing things back, clawing back ARPA dollars, clawing back part of the HSSF. And so the good news is that we got 15 million to boot. In addition, the $10 million that went to the homeless services grant pilot funds are now exempt from lapsing. And that was a real challenge because the thought was that if it wasn't expended by a certain date, that would be lost. In addition, the 40 million for the Homeless Shelter and Services Fund was extended beyond fiscal 24, $500,000 to DES for the Navajo Nation Women's Shelter and Services, and then $500,000 to DES for nonprofit organizations in Pinal County, providing nutrition, housing, and rental assistance. In terms of the affordable housing tax credit, the extension was not included in the budget. As I said earlier, we will be going for that next year. So on balance, the budget, I will call it a win, not exactly the way that we envisioned the win, but I guess in sports, a win is a win is a win. Other things as we take stock of the legislative session, we had a few other wins that I just want to highlight again. House Bill 2146, which prohibits a person that owns or operates a mobile home park from preventing a tenant from installing what is called reasonably necessary cooling methods. And we think that the vagueness of the language of this law may lead to other challenges because, as I understand it, a lot of mobile home park owners don't like the unsightly nature of window units. So we'll wait and see to see if we've got to pursue more to ensure that our mobile home residents are safe from heat. We had HB 2297, which was commercial buildings and adaptive reuse, which allowed multifamily residential or adaptive reuse development in up to 10% of commercial. This seemed very complicated, but this bill has the potential to produce more affordable units than really any of the other bills passed this session. So that was a pretty good win. And then the final two, one was the middle housing. The middle housing bill must permit multiplex homes and townhomes on specific lots. It prohibits discouraging this middle housing development. And there are permits and covenants that disallow municipalities from conditioning ADU or COSITA permits or licenses on restrictive covenants between parties. So I think it's a reasonable win. It was watered down a little bit. And the other, a bit more controversial win was the COSITA bill, HB 2720. Both of these bills were signed May 21st. And that bill prohibits more restrictive requirements for ADUs. So it allows for more potential ADUs to be built. So where we're sitting right now is really thinking about next session. We certainly know that state LIHTC is going to be among the legislative priorities. We have dispatched a survey out to policy committee members to share with us what they think we ought to prioritize, given the following. There will likely be as big a budgetary constraint next session as there is this year, and that the coalition wants to pursue that which is feasible in the next session. So if anybody has any interest in taking that survey, I am happy to pass it along to you. And with that, I will defer to questions.
Thank you, Nicole. Any questions for Nicole from the board?
I have a question. I'm sorry. I feel like I'm just just a question. Nicole, what happens? I believe that a judge upheld Attorney General. Didn't $100+ million come from a sweep, and that was put on hold? And if I'm accurate in that, what happens then to make the budget whole if that money can't be swept from the AG's office?
Well, I think that that's more complicated than I have the answers for, but I could get back to you on that one because I don't know the answer to that.
People know what I'm referring to? Yeah.
I do. And I don't know what happens. I think that's going to be between the governor and the AG.
I was just curious how they make up that $100 million revenue gap that they were anticipating. So if it proves where they can't take the money from the AG's office.
Well, I think they're grappling, but I don't know the answer to that, Mike. I can get back to you on it though.
I just curious. Thank you, Nicole.
Mhm.
All right, any other questions? Thank you, Nicole, for being here every month and keeping us in the loop with everything going down at the Capitol. We really appreciate it and appreciate your advocacy.
It's my pleasure. Let there be no doubt. I am ready for my vacation.
I can imagine. All right. Next up, we have Shanna Ellis and Shaylee Chavez, Executive Director and Program Manager of the ASU Action Nexus on Housing and Homelessness, who are going to tell us a little bit about what the Action Nexus is up to and what's going on. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you all for asking us to come. This is great. It's good to give nice updates. I know that Nicole's probably wasn't as happy as everybody wanted, so we'll try to give you some good news. So again, I'm Shanna Ellis, and this is Shaylee Chavez, and she can introduce herself in a minute. But I've sat in your seats before, so thank you for all the work that you do on the Continuum of Care. When I was with the city of Tempe, I had the opportunity to sit here. I see the parking lot hasn't changed, and neither have the microphones, but a lot of the staff members have. So Shaylee, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Shaylee Chavez, Action Nexus and Program Manager overseeing the interns, and I'll kind of jump in when we get to that part, talking about my role at ASU.
Great. So we always start our presentations with the ASU charter because one of the questions we always are asked is, why is ASU involved in affordable housing and homelessness? So I just wanted to highlight a couple of the phrases in there. Measured not by whom it excludes, but who it includes. So we, of course, want to be inclusionary in this realm that we work in. And then the last part of it, ASU assumes the fundamental responsibility for the economic, social, cultural, and overall health of the communities that it serves. So that's one of the reasons that we're here. Talk a little bit about the history of the Action Nexus. And actually, some of you on this call and in this room could probably give the history better than me because you helped put it together before I was even hired. But in 2019, the Garcia Family Foundation made a large gift to the Human Services Campus, now Keys to Change. A portion of that was carved out for the Action Nexus within Watts College, and I'll explain what Watts College is in a minute. There was a full day design charrette that was held in January of 2020, and you'll see some of your organizations listed there. And I know some of you were with different organizations when you actually sat in on this, but then I was hired, and actually Cricket was hired in March of 2020, and she was with us for 3 years, and Shaylee started over a year and a half ago. Yeah. Yes, you left a year ago in December. So here's some principles that guide the Action Nexus. This is what the individuals that attended that charrette in January of 2020. We want to supplement, not supplant. I think there was the idea that the Action Nexus was going to come in and take over the world, and that is not true. We want to be here to be a resource to all of you and amplify and boost the existing work. We know that you guys are doing amazing work out there. We don't want to do that work. We want to find out what the gaps are and help fill those. We want to stand with you when you're creating the unified voice to end homelessness And then, of course, as ASU is known as a research organization, to integrate the data needed to monitor impact and support decisions and resource allocations. We'll get into some of those research projects that we're involved with on a future slide. But we are an action-oriented, inclusive coordination point and partner to help the ecosystem of services function better together. So how we are organized, we are located in the Watts College of Public Service and Community Solutions. So we're with Community Resources and Development, Criminology, Criminal Justice, Public Affairs, and Social Work. We are located just down the street at the Westward Ho building on Fillmore and Central. And we are part of the public service team that is overseen by Cindy Parnell. And we are under it along with some other organizations that or some other centers that you might recognize, such as the Pastor Center Design Studio and the NGSC. Turn it over to Shaylee.
Awesome. So as I mentioned in my intro, a lot of the work that I'm doing is with the interns. So just kind of some quick updates on what the interns have been up to. Since we started the internships in 2020, we've had 35 students that have completed their internship and 16,000 hours of service. So a lot of the interns are doing their internship at the Key campus or at our office with ASU, depending on what their focus is. Typically social work students end up doing their internship because they're required to for their degree requirements. It's a really great way for them to learn what they need to do within the field, getting them experience kind of working within housing and homeless services. But the way that our grant is set up to do scholarships for students, they don't have to be social work students. So we've been working hard to try and find other students that are interested in housing and homelessness. This year, we're going to be having a policy master's student joining our team to kind of do her internship. So that'll be really unique to figure out kind of ways to leverage her skills, what she's learning, and the work that's happening within the community. So some of the past intern projects, we've done voter registration this past year, also sharing information about rights restoration. Those are two of our students doing that at the campus right outside of the Welcome Center. We had a master's student that created a digital resource guide for youth 18 to 24-year-olds. She worked with some of the groups with the YAC or the YAB. I'm from Pima County, so I'm like, what is the exact proper word here? But anyways, with the youth group here, getting feedback as she was creating that. That is a live site that's also connected to our ASU website, so anybody can go in and look for resources that kind of in that age range. We've also helped out with client feedback events, program evaluation. ASU has a partnership with CBI, ASU PD providing kind of outreach and coordination. So we had a student kind of going to the area around campus, interviewing people, asking what their experience has been, positive and negative, with ASU PD and CBI to see what is the impact from the client's perspective of this work. We also did a shelter evaluation of the Risk Bureau shelter on the campus. And then we're working on finalizing interns that'll be starting with us in the fall. So that's that. We also, because we're connected to ASU, have student groups, faculty that are interested in doing projects at the campus. And so there have been a few different surveys and different things like that. So there's been a social determinants of health survey. There have been some social work undergraduate classes that have done different service learning. There's a space design study to help the campus kind of get information about how to maximize the space that they have. And they're actually being able to use that more recently to kind of think about their reconstruction and different things that they're working on. And then there's also an ASU group within the engineering college that's working on creating a prototype of a bottle cleaning and refill station of the campus. Right now, because of the heat, they're actually testing their prototype in the heat to see if it'll actually work. Because obviously it's very hot here and it could have a lot of usage on the campus. So they're working on that. Hopefully we'll have it kind of in January to test on the campus. So pass back to Shanna.
We were fortunate to receive some additional funding in 2022 and double our staff, which was great. It was from the Garcia Family Foundation. And we have someone working on our shared housing initiative, which I'm sure many of you have heard about. And we have a couple slides on that in a few minutes. Evaluation services. We had been hearing, especially since the additional COVID infusion of money into our community, that a lot of programs were set up by organizations, and they weren't able to set up matrices and evaluations and all sorts of things that usually people do when starting a program. And so we have services that can help organizations do that. We'll talk about that in a minute, who we're working with. We also hire a graduate research assistant every year to focus on a different aspect. We had last year focused on the shared housing initiative, which was great. And we're hiring currently for someone to focus on evaluation. We have a huge evaluation project coming up. That's a statewide project that I think many of the organizations in this room are working with, from the Garcia Family Foundation, working on prevention. We're doing the qualitative analysis for that. And then we also offer faculty stipends to faculty during the summer. Most are on a 9-month contract, but they want to stay working during the summer. And a lot of them have plenty of projects in mind. And so these are typically just 2 to 3 month projects, and they're funded for that.
Awesome. So as Shanna mentioned, we do have the shared housing initiative within our group. Amber Maberger is our team member who works on shared housing. For those of you who don't know, I feel like a lot of you have heard about shared housing, but for those of you who don't know, shared housing kind of focusing on 2 or more people living kind of in the same space together. It's essentially a roommate situation. So our role within shared housing is providing education and support to staff in the community that are providing direct services, giving folks information about what is shared housing and how can they help their clients move into housing a little bit quicker, so they're not waiting on specific housing vouchers or waiting on specific programs. So if they have somebody that they've met organically already within the shelter space, they can kind of go through the model either themselves or with our program. Or if they have not met anyone, there's a kind of roommate matching process. So our focus when we're doing trainings is to help staff how to talk to clients about shared housing, because obviously a lot of us would like to be able to live on our own, but that might not be a reality for everyone. So having those conversations with clients, also doing landlord engagement, talking with them about how can they have specific units for shared housing. And then, as I mentioned, roommate pairing. So we have a roommate pairing process. So if someone's working with a case manager and they're interested in shared housing, there's a process the case manager can fill out an online form. And then Amber actually goes through and reviews, what is this person looking for in terms of a roommate? Are they willing to have pets? No pets? What is the gender of their roommate that they're looking for? That kind of stuff, and helps give suggestions of, hey, this might be a person that might match well with your client. And then the actual case managers help facilitate that meet and greet for them to figure out if they want to live together. We're also working on living well with others. So once people move in, how do you navigate roommate conflict? Because obviously you're potentially not working with a case manager anymore. So you are on your own in housing and figuring it out and running into the same issues that everybody else runs into when you're sharing a space with someone. And then also just helping people maintain their housing and sharing what resources could be available to them in the community. So kind of our impact with shared housing to date, we've had 38 trainings that have been conducted with a variety of staff we've talked about. So we've had 589 supportive staff trained. In 2023, 173 clients completed that housemate pairing questionnaire. So that was that online form that I was talking about. And then we've had 18 successful pairings. So these are people that have said, yes, I like the person that you matched me with. I want to move in with them. And so that is, sorry, this is Amber's side. I was like, what's the 36 people overall? I'm not sure where that matches at.
It's just double 18 times. 18 times.
There you go. I was like, math.
Yeah.
Social worker, not a math person. And also not my slide. So I'm like, I'm just sharing the information that I see. So we also recently piloted a training for clients because we got feedback from staff, specifically the outreach staff at Keys to Change, that were saying, like, yes, it's great to do shared housing, but like our clients don't want to do it. They want to be able to live on their own. So how do we have these conversations, maybe in a group setting, to help people understand and have conversations with each other about what are the pros and cons about living with someone. So we piloted a training specifically for clients last semester, and then we'll have interns kind of picking it up to see how can we encourage clients to be willing to live together. And then if you all have any organizations that haven't been trained yet. Amber is always looking for more organizations to train. So feel free to reach out to us. We'll have our contact information kind of at the end. And she can do in-person or virtual trainings, depending on your staff availability.
Yeah, and also I'd like to add that that training is all free. Free is good. And on our website, which we'll have at the end, all of the resources that Shaylee talked about are on our website, and you can download them and take a look at them and share them with your organization. We did this slide back in April, so our number is higher than 18. I think we're up to 27 matches, so we have over 50 people. So, and evaluation, I mentioned this earlier. So some of the organizations over at the right are organizations that we have worked with on deep evaluations with. And you can see some of the items that we can assist with. And looking at these organizations, we have done Qualtrics surveys via text, via email. We do focus groups, in-person interviews. It's whatever the organization feels that would most benefit them. There are some of them like Glendale and Mesa, it's their CAP programs. And so they're pretty prescribed about what we do. But for instance, the evaluation we did on Respiro, we worked very closely with their staff to figure out what components they wanted to evaluated what data they had. And then we make recommendations as to where we think they should go from there and do a presentation to their leadership or their board or however the organization wants us to help. And so for this, we do charge a very nominal fee, but we will also work with organizations on that because we know you are all nonprofits. And you can see Jesse's information there in the corner if you would like to have a consultation with her about evaluation, which of course is free. And the Action Nexus also has a general mailbox if you have questions about anything. It's just actionnexus@asu.edu. So we went over some of these, but a couple of these I wanted to highlight. We're a partner in the AZ Hack, which I know that MAG is very involved with the Arizona Housing Analytics Collaborative. That was a grant that a lot of organizations applied for to HUD a few years ago, and it was not granted to this region. A lot of the feedback that we got was that your data systems aren't connected, and that's kind of what the whole thing is about. So the Garcia Family Foundation stepped in and funded that. It is a multi-year study that is being done by our faculty in partnership with MAG and many other organizations to look at different data sets and how they connect and don't connect, and how people move through the system from year to year. And then we also have a lived experience advisory council that there are liaisons on that with MAG's group also. And they work very closely together. And we also have a page on that on our website. If there are organizations that are interested in having anything that they're working on analyzed by individuals who have lived experience and to give their input. And then one other thing I do want to emphasize is the very last bullet, and I talked about that on the left side. The statewide prevention study, it is a partnership with 3 universities. It's millions of dollars in flex funding that's offered to nonprofit agencies in Pima County, Maricopa, and then balance of state. And we have ASU, NAU, and U of A faculty that are doing both qualitative and quantitative long-term studies with the organizations on how the individuals use the flex funding and what their outcomes were, how it had an impact on their family unit. And we're incentivizing individuals to respond to each of those. So that actually starts July 1st. As you probably know, the Department of Housing also has some flex funding that is available. I believe that they announced last week who the recipients are of their funding. And one of the requirements is that they work with this group in order to provide data for the statewide prevention study. So we're really happy to partner with ADOH on this. And I think everything else we've already gone over. So, whoa, that slide didn't turn out well. Sorry about that. We we pulled it into PowerPoint from Google Sheets. I should have checked it. But anyways, there's our emails. So I think we will open it up to questions. Michael, do you have any questions for us?
Very impressive. It's actually so much.
Yeah, there's a lot, and a lot of it I didn't mention, but you know, we have, and Shaylee and Cricket and I have just tons of stories about different groups at ASU that they're very invested in and tied to what they do, but they don't understand the greater community, and that's why we exist. We have a lot of students that are here from out of state that want to do projects, and you know, we heard from one organization director that said she got 17 phone calls in one day because a professor in a class had said, do some research on homelessness. That's not okay. You guys have a job to do, and we can be the liaison and help with that. There was another group that want to do blood pressure checks at the HSC a couple years ago, and we sat down with them and said, what is the point of this? That this really helps you. It gives you experience in giving blood pressure checks, but what is the individual going to do that is suddenly diagnosed with high blood pressure, that doesn't have a stable diet, that isn't getting steady sleep, that's exposed to the elements? You're going to scare the heck out of them. That is the least of their concerns. So we just really work on being that liaison. And also the nonprofit organizations, they want to work with ASU and they have no idea where to start. So we can also help on that side of it. Shaylee, I don't know if you have anything else to add. And other questions?
I can't see anyone online, but I'll just say thank you. Thank you. First of all, what you're 4 years old now, right? You started in 2020, 4.5 years old.
Half so important when you're so young.
It's just a lot to have taken on and to have started in the middle of the pandemic and to see where you all have come. I really appreciate the walk down memory lane on how it came about. That just thank you for being here and sharing it. And this is really nice because John Ellinger was at our last month's meeting and told us a lot about the work that he's doing. So to hear your
we
piece
listened
on
in.
it.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Anyone else have anything, Cricket?
I just have a comment, and it's really probably a little bit out of order, so you guys can tell me where to put it in order. The
You
shared
never
housing
make out of
thing,
order.
I think is something we as a board or the COC in general should relook at. I feel like it happened in a odd time, and I don't think it's married well to the system, which is not on ASU's. They can't do it. Like, we'll have to do it if we want to see shared housing move forward. I was looking at I wish I had paid attention written down, but it seems like we have as many people needing housing as we've housed. Something about the permanent supportive housing number, how many people were in that, and then how many more people there. We're not building or getting a whole bunch more permanent supportive housing any day. So how are we as a community going to make use of the units that we're not accessing right now? And we have a great partner who's doing all the work and not charging us anything. So maybe we should look at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Cricket. Good point. Anyone online have anything? All right. Well, thank you both for being here. Really appreciate the updates and thank you so much for all of your work. All right. Moving on to item 9 on the agenda. It's the HMIS transition update. And I'm not sure which MAG staff is taking. Is that you, Cleo? Thank you, Cleo.
Yeah, thanks for having me again. I don't have a presentation for this, my apologies, but just really wanted to give a quick update on where we're at in this process, because I believe the last time we discussed it with the board was in January when you all approved for us to sort of move forward with this process. So wanted to provide an update there. This work is really divided into 2 parts. One is the statewide governance and policy. So what would it look like if Pima County, Maricopa County, and Balance of State all moved together to have statewide governance and oversight of a shared HMIS system? And then the second part of that is a vendor process. How do we share a vendor across the state as well, and potentially, pick a different HMIS vendor than who we currently have now? And all of this came from a lovely report from Chris Pitcher, who just walked in the room, so this is incredibly timely, who created this extremely extensive report on an assessment of our HMIS system that is available on the website for anyone to jog their memory about. But essentially, going to that statewide governance and policies work, we have so far had a couple meetings with the other COCs. The three groups are working together, figuring out how to work together in unison to draft new policies and governance document drafts. And figure out what the details of that would look like and what we really need, and how do we make sure that we have a timeline that is an agreement across all three COCs. So we've been getting together since March or February or March with the other two COCs to work on those things. And we are in the process of drafting those governance and policy documents to assemble a work group of community members from each COC to review and finalize to bring to each of the COC's boards to officially finalize. So that's where we are on that side of things. In the vendor process, very big news here. Solari is moving forward with CSH as a contractor to run the vendor RFP process for the actual new software essentially that we would be using for our HMIS system. CSH is also likely going to help with some of this governance and policy coordination work, providing guidance and facilitation there. The contract is not finalized, so we're not sure what level of support they would be able to provide, but really hoping that they can provide some support there for facilitating the conversation amongst all three COCs and letting us know what to watch out for, what they've seen in other communities, how other communities are doing this, and really offering guidance in that aspect. So that's just the update there for you all. We will be back for official presentations and votes once we are getting a panel together to review who has applied for that RFP for the vendor, as well as when we have some finalized documents on the governance and policy side to present. So I can take any questions on that.
Did I miss a timeline?
Oh, yes. It's because it's a little mushy still. I would say that we're really hoping that by the end of the summer, we have those preliminary documents ready for you all to review, hoping that by October, we have chosen as all three OCs who the vendor will be. And then actual transition to that new vendor probably won't start happening until spring of 25. So that is the general timeline that we're looking at.
Thank you, Cleo. Any other questions for Cleo? All right, seeing none, thank you so much for that update. We will see you in October to choose the vendor. Oh, okay. We will see you at the end of summer. Okay. Item number 10 is the proposal for the system infrastructure governance workshop. So Brian is going to lead us through a presentation on this proposed work group.
Thank you, co-chair, members of the board. We talked briefly last meeting about a potential smaller group. I think at the time we'd proposed a collaborative. Since then, we've sort of come around that work group might be a little bit easier. We're not necessarily trying to make this a standing group. It may be more like an ad hoc. I think time will tell what would best serve this board. But as mentioned last month, what we anticipate seeing, or what we'd like to propose today, is a small group that could support some of the work of the board with recommendations, research as needed, and so forth. Why is this needed? So we really feel like things like system infrastructure, COC expenditures, strategic goals for the COC, and so forth, they don't exactly have a place, or there isn't space all the time to have discussions about some of those things at a high level that could then be brought back to the board for recommendation. What it feels a little bit like to folks who work at the collaborative applicant these days is that we end up having some of these conversations and then trying to bring them back to the board. And it doesn't always feel like there's a lot of time for that. So we're really just trying to make some space to have these conversations. And it's largely because we've been asked these questions on several occasions and just struggled a little bit to think about what's the best way to come back with recommendations. In particular, a few examples that have come up in the last 6 months or so. It's been a little while since somebody asked during a board meeting to give a process for evaluating a collaborative applicant to recommend how that could move forward. In the first place, we've never done this, and so we struggled a little bit, kind of did some research, but didn't know exactly how to make a recommendation. And the other thing is we are the collaborative applicant, so we will not be evaluating ourselves, obviously. And I think this is a conversation that could happen at the board level, but we really need, I think, a space to do that. And then things like funding, every so often we get a request for a different type of consultant or some other expenditure out of planning grant funds. And I'm not sure we've had a conversation, at least in recent memory, talking about what funds are available out of planning grant to do things like that. So it'd be nice to get an idea from the board what the priorities might be. And really, to me, this feels like just kind of a brainstorm session where you would talk about it, maybe whiteboard it. Here's what we'd like to spend money on. So that would be helpful for our purposes. And then lastly, strategic goals. We'd like to talk about projecting inventory needs over the next few years. MAG is working on some system modeling, but I think when we get through some of that modeling work, we'll have a model, right? And then I think we have to have conversations with somebody at some level about what the implications of that model are. I think eventually it's the board's job to take all that in and to vote on it and to decide what to do with it. But I think it's gonna be very helpful to have somebody talk through what we want that to look like as a community. So anyway, that's the proposal in general. What we anticipate this looking like, you'll see there it says 5 to 7 active board members. I actually think it would make more sense probably to keep it below 8, so 7 or fewer active board members plus any amount of delegates that people on the board wanted to put forward. We'd like to keep it below quorum level just so that we don't have to, that would essentially be a second board meeting. So for this to be kind of like an open discussion among board members plus anybody else that they'd like to attend from their organizations, I think would be most productive. We see this happening once a month, maybe twice if needed. Just like any other committee, we'd like to see this be kind of a diverse group with different opinions and different perspectives. So, 1 or 2 funders, potentially, definitely folks with lived experience. I'd like to have somebody from the collaborative applicant there just so we can sort of track. And, part of the reason why we're doing this is so that we have a better understanding of what the board wants us to do, obviously. And so forth. But I also think it could be very open. And then last but not least, this would not require any kind of charter amendment for the work group. Under the charter, MAG is in a position where we can actually start a work group really anytime we want. We go crazy with work groups sometimes. We have work groups just for pizza parties these days. No, I'm kidding. But seriously, this isn't not a huge deal. But we did want to bring it here so that everyone could talk about it. I think it would be nice to have it voted on as an approved matter, just because I think it makes it a little bit more established. Everybody's aware of it. Everybody kind of knows what's going into the membership. So that's what it would look like. Not everybody is here today. It's kind of a low turnout day. So what I think might be best is if we send out an email kind of explaining this, and then we get responses if anybody is interested in doing this. Or I should say, I'd like to still do the vote today if possible. And then once the work group is sort of exists, then we would ask for people to put their hand up via email if they want to join. And if we get tons of response, then we would say, probably make recommendations about sending delegates instead of in person. Any questions about it?
I have a question. The list of things, topics are vast. And there's a lot of board members that I don't know if there might be some people that think I really be good on these things and these other 2 or 3 things I don't know about. Is there any possibility of splitting them? I don't want to make more work, but it feels like you might get more cohesiveness around someone not agreeing to do everything if we don't get enough people. Just a suggestion. I guess not a question. This is my suggestion. If you don't get enough people, it might help to break it up sort of into chunks. I would like to comment that as a member of the coordinated entry subcommittee, there is so much going on there that this board will never know the nuances of. And every time I'm in that room, I get a little antsy. Like, I want people to understand the incredibly important work happening there. And I'm looking at staff right now. So over there, wherever the camera is. I do think we need to have more in the weeds understanding of the things that we're voting on. That's just my opinion, and I'm willing to do whatever's necessary to make that happen. I can make a motion on that. Go ahead.
You know, sometimes I appreciate very much what you're trying to do, and I think it is relevant and necessary. And I think that, for lack of a better way of saying this, sometimes in the spirit of just trying to be so inclusive and trying to make sure nobody gets offended and everybody can do it. When you're asking about 4 to 7 board members, I guess the thought that jumps out to me is this something that you think, instead of just making that wide open, what would you think of the co-chairs, Rachel and Vicky, as the leader, so to speak, of the board, of them identifying with feedback from the staff, who is really engaged, who do you think would be the most qualified, and maybe give them the authority to approach those particular individuals and really make sure that it's what you're looking for, as opposed to a hodgepodge of people that, you know, they may be on the bus but not in the right seat. And I say that in the gesture of openness. I say that in the gesture of you're trying to create something here that's very positive. And I think Rachel and Vicky as co-chairs probably have a pretty good grasp of how this committee could move forward, since it's only 4 to 6 members, and letting them have the authority as opposed to going through anybody, and then you only have 5 or 6 that are in one category, and then you've got to open it up, and then you've got to do all this stuff. Slows you down, makes it, you know, just a real pain at times. And you want to get this thing going and let them come back with the names, with who they've approached, who they feel would be a well-round for the committee, and then bring it to the board and let the board vote. And I just throw that out as kind of streamlining this process.
Yes. All right. Thank you. We'll go to Liz and then we'll discuss that a little bit, but I would be open to that as well if that was something that worked for you, Brian. Go ahead, Liz.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I see that we say for the first 6 meetings, but do we plan on this being a work group that continues on indefinitely?
I think that depends on the level of need, Liz. I think it's up to the board, frankly, and I think we'd be willing to. I put 6 months because maybe we don't need indefinite work groups ever again. Is my take on this, but I would say that it really is, if the job is done in 6 months or 3 months for that matter, then I think we would wrap it. I like to try to start out with a timeline. But I think if it's like ongoing work, you know, if every month there's something to talk about and bring back to the board, then maybe it's longer.
Thank you. And then could you go back to the other slide where you showed like the things that we need to work on? Perfect. Yeah, right there. So, you know, what I'm familiar with is like when there's some large item that needs to have more of like working sessions, we usually would create like an ad hoc group that would have a specific goal we were trying to achieve, and then would be time limited. And so I'm just curious, like why we are thinking we need to kind of move away from that. Could it be that we actually have a goal of creating a process for evaluating the collaborative applicant, and that be the goal, an ad hoc group of a few board members who want to work on it, and then we get that task complete and come back? The last thing is that we have always talked about, we envision this being a working board. So kind of separating the work from the board, I think is a little bit like inconsistent with like, I think what our goals are. But I do understand that oftentimes the agenda gets full, the time gets full, we don't have a lot of time for a working session. So I just would propose that we break it down into what exactly it is we need to complete that needs more time, have that ad hoc group that's time limited, and then complete the task and then return to our regular scheduled sessions.
Your microphone, Brian.
Thanks. Totally agree that we don't want extra meetings, and that makes good sense to me, Liz. I would just propose one other thing maybe, and that is to have an introductory session where we talk about what needs to get talked about. I think that's part of the problem, is that I hear sort of things from individuals, but not from the board as a collective on what, in terms of, for example, infrastructure, strategic goals. It feels like MAG is doing a lot of the system planning stuff in a vacuum sometimes, and I don't know that that's what the board wants. So I think that having a conversation about, let's just say, charting out what some of these work groups would look like, and then I don't think I have a problem with any kind of structure from there. Would that work?
Yeah, that sounds good to me. So it's almost like, and I just want to speak very transparently. So we created the strategic plan. We've envisioned being a working board. There's a gap now between like what we've envisioned and like implementation is kind of what I'm hearing. There's some pieces that we need to come in and address that maybe aren't in our strategic plan. We don't have a space for it. So yeah, it sounds like we first need to define what all of those are. And I would totally be open to having an ad hoc work group. That first goal is try to define what's not in our strategic plan that needs to occur that we're not currently working on, so we can get our list of things that need to be done by the work group.
Am I hearing a motion being made, Liz? And could you define it a little bit more for us?
And then are we able to even, yeah, I think, because we wouldn't even be able to vote on this right now anyways, right? Doesn't it need to kind of go out to everybody for a period of time before we vote?
So this was actually on the agenda for information and approval. So we can take the formation of the ad hoc work group, and then we can have discussion on how that group gets formed and what the mission of the group is.
Yeah, I would move to update it to create an ad hoc work group of board members to first define what is missing from our strategic plan and what needs more working sessions to determine time and capacity before moving forward.
Thank you. Is there a second to that motion?
I second that motion, Danielle.
Thank you, Danielle. We have a motion from Liz and a second from Danielle. Is there discussion of this motion from the board or comments from the public? For those in the room, we'll take a voice vote. I can never do it. Voice vote. Those in favor, please say yay.
Yay.
Those opposed, please say nay. I'll now ask Brian to proceed with a roll call of those joining online.
Tim Birch.
Yay.
Liz DaCosta.
Yay.
Charles Sullivan.
Yay.
Sienna Valdez.
Yes.
Danielle Wright.
Yay.
And Vicki Phillips, co-chair.
Yay.
All right, motion passes. So thank you very much, everyone, for your comments and your feedback on that. I do think it's important that we have this group to talk offline about some of the things that really don't fit in an open meeting that's publicized on YouTube and all of that kind of stuff. So, yeah. Okay. Moving on to item number 11. Oh, yes. Do we want to talk about what the best route of forming this committee, Brian?
I think that would be great. And Michael, if I don't know if it's not out of order for me to say, if you want to just repeat back what you'd said a minute ago. Not all of it, the gist.
I'm just proposing the idea that instead of it taking a very long time, giving the authority to the co-chairs to approach the people that they feel would be the best representative of what Liz is talking about and moving that forward. And based on their experience, coming up with the committee that as co-chairs, they should have the right to put together an ad hoc committee of their choosing.
Can I comment? Yes. Can we do it yes and that people could also identify that they have the time and capacity to do it so that there's not a bunch of people who are being asked to do something that will do it because they've been asked but don't actually have the time?
That kind of comes down to somebody having the maturity to say, can't do it,
Well,
just saying.
no, not disagreeing with you. I've just been around long enough to know that sometimes people agree because they want to be included and don't have the capacity to do that. So it's fine if you don't. I just think that we have people that we don't even get to sit around there. I don't know that the co-chairs know everyone all the way because I just am not sure of that. So I'm just saying that if there's someone that really can we have a process by which people could also say that they're interested?
Yes, I think that we can do both. I think we can poll the entire 14-member board to see if people are interested. And then maybe everyone's interested. And then we look at who we think strategically might be able to help us with some of the big infrastructure issues. Does that sound like a plan? Okay. Thank you. All right. And goodness, we have a packed agenda today. Now moving on, we've got Chris Pitcher, our technical assistance provider for the Maricopa Regional COC through HUD. And he's going to discuss trends emerging at COCs around HUD Region 9 and recommendations for ongoing and future initiatives. Thank you, Chris, for being here.
I think I remember how to do all this. Haven't been here in a while. Good to see everybody. Brian asked me to come and talk about a few things. So I'm just there's no order to this. I'm just gonna start talking. If you want me to stop, tell me to stop and I'll stop and we'll talk about it. So I have been working with the COC now for over a decade. Kind of fun to see some faces. Charles, I see you up there. It's been a while. And I also work with the other two COCs in the state. So I'm actually in town to hang out with the balance state for the rest of the week. But since I landed early, wanted to come here and say hi and just talk about a few things. So when I look at what's happening around not only Region 9, but the country that we work in, I just kind of started writing things down. So coordinated entry. I heard someone, I think over on this side, be on the coordinated entry work group. I can only imagine what that looks like and feels like these days. But nationally, with the demise of the VI SPDAT, we are seeing a fracturing of kind of what's happening with coordinated entry. But we're all in the same place. We want to still use it because it's in our HMIS, and we don't have to create something new. That is something that leads us into a conversation that Cleo started on a new HMIS solution, having a tool that works for you instead of a tool that works because it's there. I think that is a really important piece of this to keep in mind as we have these conversations. I think the other big movement is I've seen a lot of different tools be adapted. There's not one that's emerging like it did before 10 years ago. I think what you're hearing more from HUD is look at yourself. You have to do a self-assessment on the coordinated entry at least annually. They don't really check too hard, but they want you to be doing this. Just like you should be looking at your cloud applicant lead annually. That's what HUD wants you to do. And actually coming up with tools that make sense for you. I think the movement is less is more. The less you can ask of folks, the better. If you can ask a limited set of questions to get to the same goal, that's what we're all trying to accomplish right now. Asking someone 100 questions that are invasive, that's not client focused, and it never was. but it was the thing we all had, so we used it. We're at this point where the industry is going to tell us what each community wants for itself, instead of, hey, there's this thing we're all taking, let's take it. So I think that's a really big movement, and I think you're already in it. I have talked to all three COCs about this at length. I think the Bounce State's interested in this conversation. Certainly Tucson, coming out of the work they're doing with the Housing Command Central, very intensive technical assistance, are likely to change their CES process quite significantly. But it almost always comes down to assessment prioritization. The other pieces aren't as important, like they have to be there, but we're always kind of talking about the same thing. And I think the assessment is really one of the bigger things that you all need to be thinking about. And creating your own is the way I would say we need to go, but that's also the hardest way. One of the other things that HUD is pushing these days that I also am very interested in is the engagement of tribal nations, meaningful engagement with tribal nations. Obviously, we have some here in Arizona. I have been doing most of my work in the state of California on this, where they have 109, and we are actually engaging those tribes in different areas, different COCs, and how they want to do that. I think what we have seen is folks try to start relationships with tribal nations, not really understanding the history of what's really happened. If you ever take some time to actually look what really happened, it wasn't that long ago that bad things were happening to tribal nations in this state, certainly in California where I do my work. So understanding that generational trauma, the bad relationships, the lies, the manipulation that has happened in the past, it really is hard to start these relationships without acknowledging those things. I think that's what we've really seen. The other is, as folks do engage with tribal nations, like, okay, let's put them on the board, but for what? I think we saw this with a person with lived experience. HUD said, put them on the board. We did not support them well, and they struggled. I think this is not, I'm not talking about y'all, I'm just talking about what I see nationally. We want to see the different things for tribes. So if we're engaging these newer populations, I've been in the COC program 20 plus years. It is hard for me to explain to someone what it really is. And I think you all understand what I'm saying. Like, you can tell pieces of what it is to people, but the whole thing, it's hard to kind of explain it. So if you're coming fresh new into this, it doesn't make any sense. It's an illogical system that we've created, and we know this. So being very careful with how you partner and not just tokenizing folks. I think we did a lot of that early in the pandemic, when we're seeing that kind of undo itself by having training, by having context setting about what you're asking folks to do. Because sitting at this board meeting, and I've sat here for a long time over different years, faces change a lot, but the problem doesn't. We're all trying to do something, but we're not always on the same page. All right, this is a feeling I have. I don't have any data on this or anything, but HUD's funding posture right now is a little bit off. I don't know what that means for you all as a COC, but as a HUD technical assistance provider, we have to do an application. We have been moved to an every other year NOFO, something that's been talked about for y'all for a little bit of time, but we're doing another application right now after doing one last year. So this signals to me that HUD is very, very worried about an administration change at the highest level, and are trying to get as much money secured for as long as they can, because they expect to lose money, if not be gutted. So I don't know what that means for your NOFO this year. Could they drop it and it'd be a 2-year? Sure. They have the mechanism. They do it with us as TA providers. So I don't have clear guidance on what's happening here, but it does feel like something's weird and that they're trying to accomplish something. And they're not really talking about it, but you can see the actions of it. So just note that if an application comes out before a presidential change, probably go after it. There's probably a reason for that. Yes, sir. Please. Yeah.
I'm hearing you say at the highest level, if President Trump is elected,
Yep.
former President Trump is elected. What was the experience when he became president in 2016? I forget, did HUD see a lot of things gutted?
Not too bad in homeless services. And remember, at the same time, we were dealing with a pandemic that brought in unprecedented amount of funding into our world via ESGCD. We're talking $4 billion. So that changed the impact. I think what we saw most was an attempt to change policy decisions. So like equal access.
Okay.
That was something that they wanted, that administration wanted gone. They didn't have enough time to get it gone because there was a crisis, a pandemic, to do so. If there was another chance for that administration, do I think the equal access rule would be gone? Probably.
Okay.
They wanted it before, so they probably want it again. And assuming we don't have crises like we did in 2019 specifically, hopefully that wouldn't happen, but that's likely what HUD is afraid of. And also, it's not just president, it's the Congress too.
Sure.
Congress changed
Yeah.
significantly. There's not always a ton of support for housing.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah, totally. All right, another thing that's kind of going around our region and every other region is the Violence Against Women Act. I think we've all noticed there, thought, hey, maybe our victim service providers got it all handled. We don't have to worry about it. Nope. All the HUD programs are affected by the Violence Against Women Act, and we're seeing HUD do a lot more national trainings on it, local trainings on it, making sure mostly that folks have emergency transfer plans in place, can explain that to landlords. I think are some of the bigger things, but overall, it's giving us an opportunity that has changed since 2004, 2005, when the Violence Against Women Act came out that said providers can't use HMIS, and here's all this other stuff. Now we have this gap between COC and providers, domestic violence providers, and I see that. I thought the coordinated entry system would pull us together. It didn't pull us together as much as I thought it would. I'm seeing the work that we're doing about saying, hey, this is the Violence Against Women Act. We understand housing. You understand victims. But you need housing, and we're serving victims. So how do we begin to bridge that together? And I'm starting to see that be something the HUD is interested in. I think the flavor I'm seeing here in Arizona is a lot of our victim service providers are struggling to spend all of their HUD funding because it's not logical to the way they do business. It's logical the way COC does business. So oftentimes we're going to need to support our VSPs a little differently. We're also seeing a lot of VSPs just drop and just stop becoming providers in the COC space and overall. And this isn't just Maricopa. I saw it in Tucson. I've seen it in Balance State. It's just a bad time. There's also big cuts coming from OVC, which is going to really hurt those folks much more than it has in the past. And I am worried about that whole situation and what could happen. So if there's an opportunity for us to work or understand our victim service providers better and try to bring that COC and domestic violence provider gap back, I'm seeing this is a really good time. So maybe the only time to do so. I don't know. All right, I'm running out of steam, Brian.
Is anybody doing that well?
We are doing a lot of it right now in California. We're finishing up a 3-year contract with California to do that. We're trying. I think there's no one doing it well. You can get a good ETP in place, or electronic transfer, emergency transfer plan in place, but that connection of bringing those two silos back together, I'm not seeing that very well almost anywhere. And we're trying very hard. We have a cohort of 8 communities in California we're just finished with. They may all made progress, but I wouldn't say like, hey, here's the one I'd shine out to you. Since Cleo brought up HMIS, and I can't help myself but talk about HMIS stuff, I'm going to do it some more. So the data standards would be released this fall. They have been delayed a couple of years. Largely, I want to explain that that's never happened before in my years since 2004, working in this. And largely it was that, and I think you all felt this as of October 1st of last year, most yours is included, the HMIS solutions just weren't ready. And all the reports broke, all the data entry had to be done backwards. And I think HUD saw that more than they'd ever seen it before and said, okay, we're asking too much. We need to slow this down, be more deliberate, ask for less changes so that you all can keep doing what you need to do. And the vendors aren't necessarily, sorry about that, in the crosshairs all the time. That said, I did a report, put your vendor in the crosshairs that you mentioned, the Arizona Data Landscape Project. They're not without fault, but again, we're noticing as HUD, like, okay, we're asking too much. We're changing too much. Things are happening and it's hurting you all. And that's not what we want to see. So that's been delayed for a couple of years. There'll be some probably a little tiny tweak updates this year. I am the data subject matter expert for the ESG program. We're going to remove ESG CV. That's our change this year. We're just going to take a category away. Should be easy. No one else is really doing anything big this year. So HMIS should stay stable. It's also a good time for you to do what you're doing because there won't be a lot of changes to have to deal with. That just happened. That's happenstance. That wasn't by design. It does happenstance. I think the last thing I'll leave you with is in Arizona, all 3 COCs have either been mentioned in unified funding agency conversations or the field office believes that you want to do this. We already have one unified funding agency here. It's the reason I'm here for the Arizona Balance of State. If this is something you're interested in, there are lots of folks in your state that know what not to do because it took us 3 attempts for Balance of State to be successful. So if you are interested in this and the HUD field office believes that you all are, ask for help. Talk to the folks at ADOH. They are doing it. We're going to spend the next 3 days with them, kind of helping them maximize their UFA capabilities. So it's a really good opportunity for you to learn from them and other folks if you're interested in that. And if you're not, that's cool. It's a big deal. It's a lot of work. So just know that going in. And if you do apply, the financial pieces, which is the main part of it, have to be perfect. There's one little mistake, you're out. But once you get it, HUD generally wants to work with you, wants to keep you there. So for instance, the Arizona Bound State received a bunch of findings in their first year. We're here to help kind of figure out some of those things. How can we make this thing work better?
Chris, what are the benefits of that?
That's a good question. I'm not seeing a lot of benefits being in the middle of it. It was very beneficial for the state of Arizona, ADOH, because they already had all the funding. So every project to the COC from Bound State already went to ADOH and they subbed it. So usually that's one of the first biggest things, that you consolidate your funding. You're able to move things around. If you have a provider that's underperforming, you can just quickly, more so than a non-UFA, move money around, make sure things are working best for the system. It gives you much more systemic control, but it gives you the obligations of a field office. You have to have a lot more oversight, and you would have to have every dollar from the COC coming through the COC. That's the scary part. Because ADOH already had that, that was not a scary part. But that does give you some level of flexibility to spend more of your money. So I know you do tend to leave some money on the table for certain projects. You would have the ability to midstream begin correcting that instead of waiting to the end of the year and like, oh, well, we can't use the money now. That's probably the main one. There's more funding available too, but the increase in responsibilities are commensurate. It's not like you're making a whole lot of money. Okay. Helpful?
Yes.
And I think that was all the topics I was asked to talk upon, but I'm always happy to talk about other things CUC related or HMS related or CES related or whatever y'all want to talk about.
Well, that was very helpful. Anyone have anything else they want Chris to talk about? We're very lucky that you just happened to be in town today and able
Swinging
to
through.
join us and give us a lot of like detailed information that I was not familiar with for sure. So thank you.
Well, and as your HUD tech assistant provider, I'm the lightest touch you get. I'm only here because I happen to be coming through town. The COC board and Brian knows how to find me. You can reach out with questions, reach out with things you need. And if we can't figure it out, I at least know the people that can, and we can do those connections. So there's been times in the past where I've been much more involved with this COC than not. Right now, it's for whatever reason, it's Bound State that has my attention.
Yeah.
So that doesn't mean you don't have my attention. It's just, you don't need as much right now. So if you do end up needing something, reach out. We can help us.
Great. Thank you.
Pleasure.
All right, let's see, we're at 12 on the agenda. MAG staff will now provide us with updates on staffing changes and upcoming events. Brian?
Don't actually have any upcoming events that I can think of. Well, National Alliance, and then we're going to USICH this is in Bethesda, Maryland, I think, and there's a few delegates from around the area. So City of Phoenix, Mesa County, plus a couple of MAG staff are going, and just to talk about USICH work with the All Inside initiative. Anything to add? Also, really excited to talk about my team. So we have finally hired Matt Finley for good. So now that he's working on YHSI, he has to stay. And so we're really happy to bring him on full time. Also excited to say that we've got Dylan a much needed promotion, and we're really excited that he's going to be at a planner level 2. I don't know if that means anything to anybody, but it's a promotion and he deserves it. So thanks, Dylan, for all your hard work, man. And that's it.
Awesome. Well, congratulations to you both. All right, item number 13 on the agenda is the request for future agenda items. Do board members have any other action or discussion that you want to see on our future meetings? And just for clarification, we don't have one in July, right? Or do we have a meeting in July? Maybe?
I think they thought there was one in July.
Oh.
But I don't know.
Okay. I could be wrong. I thought we didn't typically do a July, but
Stay
you know what?
tuned on that. We have to. I've only been here for. I think I started in July, and I know I didn't go to that COC. So let me touch
Well,
base with the team.
regardless, we'll have a future meeting. What do we want to see on the agenda other than I know we're going to.
Could I ask Rachel if, July is such a a month where so many people are gone on vacation. Is there pressing business to have in July? And if not, it can it be voted on whether there needs to be a meeting, and just, if not, then we would push it back to August? Or is that something that we can't do?
We can't take action on something that's not on the agenda. So
Yeah.
we can't take an action on it, but we can get clarification as to whether there's a meeting in July
Okay.
or the meeting could be canceled. I see Liz has her hand up too, so just wanted to go to Liz.
I'm hoping that our ad hoc group meets before the next July meeting, which I have it scheduled for July 29th. And so we could add to the agenda a report out from that ad hoc work group.
Absolutely.
I think that was when the conference used to be later in the month. It
maybe.
often got postponed because there'd be so many people at the conference, but now the conference is in the earlier months, so I don't think the adjustments been made.
Thank you. Good point. And then also we will have the Dr. Heather Ross and Dr. Bowman talk about the item that was supposed to be on today's agenda was moved. Actually, that's in August, not July. So
Yeah, the main agenda item that we have noted for July is that it's going to be an update on the coordinated entry system progress towards the assessment tool and some things like that. That was going to happen this month, but we ended up with a relatively full agenda, so we pushed it back. I'll get confirmation on whether July was supposed to happen. It's definitely been calendared. I don't know if there's anything in the charter that says we do 11 a year. So I'm going to verify 12 or 11 and I'll get back to you.
thank you. All right. Not seeing any other hands go up. Item 14 on the agenda is the board roundtable. I wanted to open it up to the floor. If any board members have announcements, events, or challenges that you want to address or opportunities to come together.
That was a lot. Say that again.
Oh, any challenges, events, opportunities for us to come together? Any, just roundtable
Got it.
announcements. I have one, just Cleo and just Mag in general, that the heat is here and we have seen a ton of people at our heat relief sites at the city of Phoenix, and I know the rest have as well. And it's just, it's been really eye-opening. We've done a lot differently this year at the city of Phoenix. And so partnering with the Maricopa County as well for some funding, but we're just seeing unprecedented numbers of people. And, but I am really happy that our partnership with CBI, we've helped a lot of people who are coming for heat relief enter and get other additional services. So yeah, that's my announcement.
I have a question on that, Rachel, really quickly. Do you get the sense that it's people who were not accessing services previously because they weren't aware and it's like the increased communication? Or does it seem like the need is just that much greater this year?
Just about everyone we're interacting with has an HMIS profile, so they've been in the system at some point. So I just think we have more opportunities, more 24, and the first time in Phoenix's history that we've had 24-hour heat relief sites, and so it's people are able to access it at any time of the day and able to get transportation to other services at any time of the day too.
Okay, thank you.
Any other board members have anything they want to share? All right. I guess